We have faced several obstacles from a bureaucratic and procedural and policy perspective.
Tonight, what will 2018 hold for the National Inquiry into Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls?
Racism is everywhere in Thunder Bay. It's at the hospital, it's like within the police, it's within even schools.
Will the city of Thunder Bay continue to be rocked by controversy?
You see, the issue isn't the desire for legalization. The government ran a plebiscite about that at the end of last year, and 3/4 of respondents said, yes, they're in favor of some sort of legalized marijuana sales.
And when will Nunavut write new rules on marijuana? Good evening and Happy New Year. I'm Rick Harp. Dennis Ward is away. Cancelled meetings, resignations, firings, calls for commissioners to step down. It was a turbulent year for the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. What could 2018 bring? APTN's Dennis Ward explores that question.
It's been a tumultuous year for the long-awaited, highly anticipated National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. After hosting a number of advisory meetings, the inquiry announced it would begin hearings in May 2017, but there was growing impatience.
I get that there's a lot of background work that needs to be done, but we still need to, take care of the families out there.
A coalition in Manitoba was already raising concerns over a lack of transparency that was leaving families in the dark. Hearings had not even started, and there were calls for a boycott.
It's the ongoing problems. It's the ongoing presentations of these problematic behaviors, the fact that we have consistently voiced our concerns, and that it's falling on deaf ears.
At the end of May, hearings kicked off in Whitehorse, but shortly after, the resignations started, including one of the 5 commissioners, Marilyn Poitras. That came as a shock. By the end of the year, more than 20 people were no longer working with the National Inquiry. Hearings were also being postponed, but the inquiry pushed on as calls for a reset grew louder. In November, the commissioners released an interim report. It included 10 recommendations, including the creation of a national police task force.
We believe that the appropriate authority to hear this evidence needs to be created immediately. Many families and Indigenous communities do not trust the institutions that are currently in place.
There was talk for the need of an extension to the 2-year mandate, and blame was placed on the government for challenges the inquiry was facing.
We have faced several obstacles from a bureaucratic and procedural and policy perspective in getting our National Inquiry up and running and mobilized all across Canada. We continue pretty much daily to speak to government about new options, new ways of doing things.
Things came to a head in December at the AFN Special Assembly.
And you're standing here giving us a report, hoping that we'll support an extension of the work that we don't understand and that doesn't belong to you. We need to see you resign, unfortunately, and I know that more women believe that all of you should resign, but for me personally, it's you. We saw a commission that is falling apart and is not doing the work that the women and children and men fought for, and I'm sorry to say that, but I think you have to go.
No request for an extension ever came. The inquiry is expected to resume hearings in Yellowknife on January 23rd.
Joining us now with what's new and what's to come with the National Inquiry is APTN reporter Kathleen Martins. Kathleen, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Rick. Happy to be here.
Now, Kathleen, before the Christmas break, you had reported that the inquiry had not yet asked for an extension. That's formally speaking. Yet informally, that's all we've heard about from the inquiry for the past few months. So what gives there?
I know, and that's why we looked into it, because they promised they were going to file it before Christmas. So right that last day before the break, we phoned all day. We waited to hear back from somebody. Nothing filed. Checked again today with the government. Nothing received from the inquiry. We tried to contact somebody at the inquiry, no answer. To be fair, their offices are closed till next week. I wish I knew what had happened, why they didn't get the extension request in like they said they would, but I don't know the reason. We, of course, are going to keep on them, try to find out, but nothing yet to the government as of today.
Now, I imagine for its critics, and there have been a few critics, this could be another reason to question the inquiry itself. However, there's a new poll commissioned. It found 72% of Canadians seem to support the inquiry. Can you fill out that a bit more?
Yeah, you bet. They actually, 72% think the inquiry is important. We don't know the exact question they were asked, but they do think it's an important issue. Now, there are a number, like another 17% said it was unimportant. So you kind of have to, you know, you're not sure what they were asked. This is 1,000 Canadians, though, so that's a pretty good margin. This poll was done, we don't know when either, but the results were published over Christmas when I don't know how many people would have seen it. We certainly tweeted it out and repeated it, and a lot of people retweeted our retweets, so there's a lot of interest anytime anybody says anything about the inquiry. First I've heard of a poll being done on it, though, so that's something a little newsworthy. Again, that's a big group of folks that support the importance of it. The actual work of it, you know, how it's been mired in controversy, very turbulent, all kinds of troubles. We don't know if they were asked about that or not.
So we support its existence, not necessarily how it's working so far.
Exactly. It's a little like saying we support reconciliation,
right.
We support a long weekend in the middle of the summer. We don't know, you know, the weight they put on it.
And do we know how many of those 1,000 people polled are Indigenous?
Doesn't say that. I just got off the Nanos website. Doesn't tell us the questions they were asked. Doesn't tell us who was asked.
Okay. All right. So what's coming up for the inquiry?
You know what? They've got a hearing this month in Yellowknife.
Okay.
It was postponed earlier this fall, and then another one next month in February in Rankin Inlet. APTN, of course, streaming it live online as it has done all of them so far. There's been 8 so far. And we'll have full team coverage there as well.
And remind us again, when is it set to wrap up under its current 2-year mandate?
Yeah, you know what? It's supposed to finish in November 2018, so in about a year, and have a full report by then. That's why they want another 2 years. They say that's not enough time. Do you want to ask about?
Yeah, now, for those who might actually be curious, what's on your lapel there?
Yeah, isn't that nice? A woman in Saanich, BC, Barbara Hay sent that in. She said she watched our coverage of the MMIWG inquiry in Winnipeg. She saw somebody had made a very plain one. She put a little glitter, a bead, and she added a feather for a little West Coast flair. So thank you very much, Barbara, for watching and doing that.
And thank you, Kathleen, for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Care to share your thoughts about this or any other story you see in our newscast? Here's how to get in touch. Send an email to news@aptn.ca. Follow us on Facebook. On Twitter, we're at APTN News, or go to our website, aptnnews.ca. And when the newscast returns, tumultuous times in Thunder Bay. We'll look back and look ahead at one of 2017's biggest stories. Please stay tuned. A sunny -14 in Fredericton. In Nukchuak, -35, partly cloudy. Val-d'Or, -14 and cloudy. Chibougamau, -19, partly cloudy. Sarnia, -11 and cloudy. Toronto, -9, mostly cloudy. Big Trout Lake, -27, partly cloudy. Sioux Lookout, -24 and sunny. Lots of sun in northern Manitoba. Barons River, partly cloudy, -21. Winnipeg, -21 and sunny. Swift Current, -6, partly cloudy. Regina, -11, also partly cloudy. Uranium City, cloudy, -21. Meadow Lake, mostly cloudy, -10. And welcome back. A police chief and mayor facing criminal charges. a police service and its board under investigation. Just some of the signs of a city in crisis. That city is Thunder Bay, Ontario, one of APTN's top stories of 2017. Our Dennis Ward takes this look back.
2017 started off in a violent way in Thunder Bay. In the wee hours of January 28th, a trailer hitch was thrown from a moving vehicle, hitting Barbara Kentner as she and her sister Melissa walked down a city street.
I seen the guy hanging outside the car window like that.
Like what, sorry?
Like he was hanging outside the car window like this. I didn't really think anything of it. And then I heard him say, "Oh, I got one of them," and he's laughing away.
18-year-old Braden Bushby was charged with aggravated assault. Kentner suffered internal injuries and passed away in July. The charges against Bushby have now been upgraded to second-degree murder. The incident sparked a conversation on racism in Thunder Bay.
Racism is everywhere in Thunder Bay. It's at the hospital. It's like within the police. It's within even schools, like high schools. It's within everywhere. It's in your everyday life.
A report released by Statistics Canada found Thunder Bay was the leading city for hate crimes reported to police in 2015. On May 6th, 2 First Nations youth went missing. Eventually, the bodies of 14-year-old Josiah Begg and 17-year-old Tammy Kiash would be pulled from a city waterway. This just months after an inquest into the deaths of 7 First Nations students who also died under similar circumstances. The increasing number of river deaths have people asking questions. First Nations leaders, including Anishinaabe Nation and Grand Council Treaty 3, have requested the RCMP take over the death investigations. The Thunder Bay Police Service and its board are both being investigated in a systemic review of how it polices Indigenous people in the city. Senator Murray Sinclair is heading up that investigation, and his report will be released in August 2018. Thunder Bay's police chief is facing charges of breach of trust and obstruction of justice for an unrelated incident. A verdict in that case is expected on January 25th. The city's mayor, his wife, and another city resident are also facing charges. Investigative reporter Tanya Talega, whose book Seven Fallen Feathers looks into the deaths of the 7 First Nations youth who died while attending school in Thunder Bay, said in an episode of Face to Face, the issue is bigger than just one city.
It is a Thunder Bay problem. It's a Canada problem as well. I mean, you could look at stories across Canada. You could look at Colton Bushy. You can look at murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls. The same things are heard of over and over again. Concerns aren't taken seriously when Indigenous people call the police. There are communications issues. Nobody calls them back. Coroners don't phone them back, and that's not just a Thunder Bay problem. That's a problem across the country.
At its last meeting of 2017, the Thunder Bay Police Board swore in a new member, an Indigenous lawyer, bringing some hope after a year of challenging times for the city and police.
APTN's Willow Fiddler followed all of these stories in 2017, and she joins us now from Thunder Bay. Willow, to say it was quite the year in Thunder Bay would be quite the understatement, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's been quite the year, Rick. 2017 started off with mostly policing issues from 2016. And that's pretty much where the year ended also, but perhaps with a little bit more optimism than last year. At the beginning of 2017, that's when the Office of the Independent Police Review Director had just begun his investigation into Thunder Bay Police. And that's also when Anishinaabe Nation Deputy Grand Chief Anna Betty Achni-Paneshkum called on the Thunder Bay Police Services Board to appoint or to have an Indigenous board member, ways of helping the relationship between Indigenous people in the city and the police. But those two issues, I don't think anyone was really prepared for what would unfold over the year. It was, of course, the end of January when Barbara Kentner, 34-year-old First Nations woman living in the city, was hit with the trailer hitch, allegedly thrown by 19-year-old Braden Bushby. and he was charged with aggravated assault. Of course, Barbara died. You know, we heard Dennis's report. Barbara died in July, and those charges against Bushby have now been upgraded to second-degree murder. There was also more tragedy in the spring with the deaths of Josiah Begg and Tammy Kiash, and those really, those deaths really spoke and I guess opened up old wounds about the concerns First Nations people have in the city about their safety, particularly the safety of First Nations youth in the city. This coming out of 145 recommendations from the student inquest. So all of this was still quite fresh for us over the year, and we had, the city, we had people, groups working towards the, implementing the recommendations that would help prevent similar deaths. And I think, we have to keep in mind that that's kind of where things were at, and it really exasperated just the tragedy that unfolded over the year.
So that's a review of what's come before. Where do we expect things will go over the new year?
So we just in January alone, we have a few things coming up. The criminal charges against Police Chief J.P. Levesque, his trial ended just last month, so his verdict is set to be heard at the end of the month, on the 25th. He pleaded not guilty, to obstructing justice and breach of trust in a case related to involving the mayor. The mayor also faces his own charges, and his pretrial is scheduled for charges of extortion, and obstructing justice is set for January of 19. And then at the end of the month, the trial of Braden Bushby will be set to start as well. His pretrial is set for January 26th. So those are a few things just this month alone.
Lots to take in. Willow, thank you very much for this overview.
Thank you.
Time for a quick break. When we come back, our look ahead to 2018 looks northward to Nunavut. Stay tuned. Grand Prairie, some sun and cloud, -1. High level, mostly cloudy, -17. Calgary, sunny and 2. Edmonton, -1, partly cloudy. Tofino, 10, mostly cloudy. Quesnel, -10, mostly cloudy. Dees Lake, -13, mostly cloudy. Fort St. John, mostly cloudy, -1. Old Crow, cloudy, -16. Watson Lake, mostly cloudy, -19. Ray Lakes, -21, mostly cloudy. Nunavut, -5, partly cloudy. Arviat, -32 and sunny. Cambridge Bay, -30 and sunny. Clyde River, -26 and sunny. Taloyoak, -30 and sunny. And welcome back. Tonight's program has been all about stories we're following into the new year. Now we turn our attention to the north, more specifically Nunavut. And joining me now from Iqaluit is our own Kent Driscoll. Hello, Kent.
Hello, Rick. Happy New Year.
Thank you very much. You too. So let's look ahead to this upcoming year by wondering if there's anything hanging around from last year, that is 2017, that you expect to see come back in the new year.
Well, Rick, there are only 2 jurisdictions in the country that haven't decided what they're going to do with the federal marijuana legislation, Saskatchewan and Nunavut. And for Nunavut, it is a bit of a thorny issue. You see, the issue isn't the desire for legalization. The government ran a plebiscite about that at the end of last year, and 3/4 of respondents said, yes, they're in favor of some sort of legalized marijuana sales. Now, the thing is, they haven't put the legislation in to allow for this to happen. And I asked the government about this just before Christmas, and they didn't have a firm timeline in place. The session starts up again in March, and this new government will have to have a plan in place by then. Now, the interesting thing, Paul Quassa, when he was running for premier just back in November, was asked about this during that process. And what he said is he would favor a regime that mirrors what we have for our alcohol regime, which means you're setting up a three-tiered system where a community can decide on their own whether they have no marijuana, marijuana approved by a committee of elders, or a complete wide open system like we would have in here for Iqaluit for alcohol. So the other side of this coin is Nunavut Incorporated. Now, Nunavut, they're the land claims organization that's responsible for the Nunavut Agreement. They have come out from their annual general meeting opposed to the entire idea of marijuana legalization. So that's a political fight that's spoiling to happen absolutely on the floor of the Assembly. Now, all three of Nunavut's regions are expecting to hold consultations this year, but whether that can happen in time for the proposed Canada Day launch, that's still very much up in the air.
So, Ken, what else do we have to look forward to in terms of stories from Nunavut?
Well, Nutrition North is bound to resurface, Rick. That was a major issue for the previous Conservative government, and it sort of lay fallow under the Liberals. But when you consider just how often the Liberal Party of Canada complained about Nutrition North when they were in opposition, it seems only a matter of time before that would be coming up again. Now, the Liberals campaigned on a very specific promise: to fix Nutrition North, not to repeal it. They want to fix the existing program. And what they've done is they've added 37 communities to the list of communities that are eligible under the program. But many would argue here in Nunavut that you're taking a broken program and expanding it to more communities isn't necessarily going to help anything. Now, Hunter Tutu, when he was running for the Liberal Party, was following very much that same party line, but since he was elected, he was removed from the Liberal Party and the caucus and now sits as an independent. And back in December, he was questioning Carolyn Bennett about this issue in the House of Commons. He had said the last time he asked, he was told something would happen soon, and that was in May. So he's asking this question in December. And Bennett's response was, quote, "It's completely unacceptable that many Northerners are still struggling to feed their families," which sounds an awful lot like what the Conservatives used to say when Dr. Bennett was asking them those questions. So the major question we're left with Nutrition North is, a reformed Nutrition North, what does that look like? Who does it help? What are the goals in place? The one thing the Liberal government has put through is expanded provisions for country food. That's basically food that you hunt. And that's been well received, but for the rest of it, it's still very much up in the air, Rick.
All right, Ken, thank you very much for this update.
Oh, thank you, Rick. Koyanamik.
The new year brought a special treat for those willing to brave the frigid conditions. The first supermoon of the year, nicknamed a wolf moon, arrived and lit up the sky last night. Our nearest celestial neighbor appeared 14% bigger and 30% brighter than normal. Now, you won't have to wait too long to see another. This January 31st, another supermoon will coincide with a total lunar eclipse. Meanwhile, take a look at this stunning shot of the Northern Lights from Yellowknife taken by Abby Reed. Now, your photos can also be showcased here on APTN National News. Email them to share@aptn.ca or tag APTN News on Twitter or Instagram. And Instagram, in fact, is where you can see all of our past photos of the day, as well as pictures taken by our reporters. Well, that's pretty much it for tonight's program. We leave you now with some more sights and sounds. In this case, New Year's Eve fireworks from across Canada and around the world. Have a good night, everyone.